when I took over, I said, and this is something I learned from tobacco. If you got such customer feedback, you have to look into it. We listen a lot to the market. We listen a lot to the customer. We have fan clubs in a lot of markets. Working with the fan clubs, involving them in the development process, involving retailers, suppliers, plus listening to the market. It gives you also a lot of indications where you should go and what is next.
So, how are you?
Very well. I'm happy to be here in Kuwait.
It's always a pleasure for us to have people visit Kuwait and see hopefully the good side of it. How was it so far for you?
Yeah, I mean, we had a beautiful event this night with customers and I think we have 1 or 2 collectors, so that's a good start. As you know, we've been actually in Kuwait since the 90s, but we had in between we had a kind of a break. We changed distribution ship, and we sort of disappeared. And actually, since 2014-15, we're back with Trafalgar. So it's also interesting to see kind of the younger generations picking us up, and we're building the brand back step by step.
And Maurice Lacroix is not a new brand; it's like 50 years old, right?
Yes.
And you mentioned that you have a long history in Kuwait or in the region. It's not something new or not like maybe. So you mentioned the years you started in
end of the 90s.
End of the 90s.
Yeah. I mean, the brand has been founded in 1975. At the start, the first expansion regions were close to Switzerland, so it was about Germany, Austria, Spain, Italy. And then when we started having a success in Europe, first region where we moved to was the Middle East, and then and also quite simultaneously also to the Far East.
And how do you see the region, Kuwait, the collectors in Kuwait, Dubai, and like we see this Gulf region is a very similar. We share a lot of the same passion. But how would you characterize our collectors?
I mean, it's interesting because I mean, of course, you have the very high-end brands, and you have a lot of collectors for this segment of business. Our key price positioning in Swiss francs is between 1,000 and 3,000 Swiss francs, and we have some manufacturer or kind of dedicated special developments. It goes up to 10,000, 12,000 is kind of the limit, and so we tend to be kind of a different customer segment than what other brands would have in the region, and so it depends a bit the markets, but in
the price range and how
so
different.
So I mean it's a bit it depends a bit, bit of the size of the countries. If I take, for example, Saudi, it's about 80 million people, 40 million or 50 million people. You got a huge middle class, right? Where I take Qatar, we talk about a few million, but there's kind of the customer base. We talk about 500,000 people who really are really wealthy, and then of course in terms of purchasing power and the market is much higher. So for us it's interesting to see like in all these markets, and also based on the positioning of the brand, because what we really focus at millennials and Gen Zs. So it's upcoming generations. It's not necessarily generations that have a very high or very profound watch education, but they are picking up what's interesting. They are picking up trends. They are picking up luxury. They are picking up stories, and we have been very successful on building this and kind of catering to them the last few years.
And again, remember when I told you, I think of your brand as a guy who loves watches and follow these kind of stuff, is that it's very modern. It's a watch I would own after owning everything, or it's a first watch. And that's definitely the case, right? A lot of people are entering watch, let's not collecting even, just hobbyist through the Icon collection you did, or even I think with the smaller generation, the Icon, right?
Yeah.
I mean the Tide. The Tide collection that we were discussing it before. But I wanna know, one of the things that we like to do in Timekeeper is like, we feel this industry is all about the people. So I wanna know, it's like, how did you end up being with Maurice Lacroix?
So it's a long story, but I was before I studied, my kind of dream or passion was always about communication, and I loved everything that was around marketing. And some my father told me, if you want to work in marketing or communication, you better study and you better go and do kind of a business degree. So I did this in Lausanne, and doing this, I organized kind of the year ends big party, and we were looking for sponsors, and I got in contact with Tag Heuer. And at that time, Tag Heuer, so it was, we're talking here end of the it was end of the 90s. And I think I did a good job, and then had a contact with Tag Heuer, and they told me, listen, next month you're done with your studies, and if you're interested, you can apply for a position in marketing. And that was kind of the dream job, right? With my background of always looking at advertising and campaigns and everything. So for me, it was like, wow, I was kind of at that time, you didn't have internet, so you had magazines, and I was cutting out the adverts, and had kind of a collection. I had my kind of book of what was for me good advertising, and I had cut out a few of these Tag Heuer advertising. So for me, it was kind of, wow, I can have a job in that company. And when I started Tag Heuer, it was before it was purchased by LVMH, so it was quite a sizable company, but it's not the Tag Heuer of today. So in terms of structures, teams, it was quite small. It was kind of boutique brand, right? Big boutique brand starting to become big. So for me, it was also my first studies, and I have always been keen on learning as much as possible that I could. So for me, coming out of university and first job, that was not the end of it. For me, that was kind of the start or the continuation of. So
that's really start of the learning, right?
Yeah,
that's where you learn a lot.
Yeah. And from there on, I said, okay, I need to go to continue to perfect myself and to be better and to be kind of as good as I can into marketing. And then I went into tobacco. I worked for British Tobacco, and there, of course, tobacco, beginning of the 2000s, it was incredible the means you had. You had investments, you can do all kinds of communication, you could do TV, cinema, you could do in-store. It was incredible. So it was also, in terms of development, was very interesting, because you were basically every 3 to 6 months you were sent to a training on communication, on branding, on marketing. So this company also invests a lot in the development of their people, and that was quite different to other companies, and it was also what I wanted. But after 4 or 5 years not smoking, I said, okay, maybe I do have an issue here, and I want to do something different, and I also wanted to do something 180 degrees different. And at that time, I had one of my best friends. He was working for pharmaceutical companies, and he told me, you know what, you're never going to get a job in these companies because you have a management business degree, and you need to have a kind of a medical degree. You need to be a doctor, because at those 2005, usually you needed to be a doctor or kind of a trained medical staff to be able to work in these pharmaceutical companies and to develop communication. Yeah? You would develop basically kind of one-pagers on the effects of medication. But at that time, luckily, Novartis was looking for people who had experience with consumer communication, emotional communication. They saw a big benefit of starting to hit that market. So, that's the coincidence that I got that job, right? Because if it was on my medical degree, forget it. So I did that for 2 years, 3 years, and after 2 years, I remember, basically you sell pills, caplets, powders, syrups, and you were, on weekends discussing with friends, everybody's like, yeah, look at my new watch, look at the car, look at this, look at that, working here, working there. I'm like, yeah, we have a new innovative formulation, and it's great. And you know, you don't have the same passion, right? So at that time, my girlfriend was living in Zurich, and I said, you know, I want to go. No, I didn't say I want to go back into watches, but I need to do something for a luxury good, and watches basically around Zurich. You had you know, kind of sizable companies. You had IWC in Schaffhausen, which is a half hour from Zurich, 45 minutes. And you had Maurice Lacroix, which was at that time the headquarters, and the whole marketing and administration was based in Zurich. And what I did is there was an opening in marketing, so perfect for me in Zurich. So I applied and I got the job. And
So you started from the marketing department.
yes, international marketing director.
And now you're kind of the head, or how?
Yeah, so today, I mean, they call the job. So we belong to DKSH. So there is a CEO for DKSH, and that is why we call the position that I'm doing managing director. But basically, if you compare it to other watch companies, it would be CEO, right? Yeah.
And like as a Swiss guy, like during studies and everything, watches or this industry is always in your head, in your mind.
Yeah.
That you wanna either work for a watch company or do.
I mean, I was so my period was looking into advertising. I was also looking very much into watches. I used to read all there was Montre Passion, which was kind of the reference in watches. It was a kind of a consumer-oriented watch magazine, and it came out, I think, twice or 4 times a year. And I remember I was reading and collecting these magazines with like 16, 17 already. And I mean, this whole passion came about because my father had some friends who knew, you know, it's always the same thing. Who knows someone who knows someone who works in a watch company, right?
Yeah.
And he had some close contacts with Ebel.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was Ebel in the 1990s, 1990s to 1995. So it was a beautiful period. You know, it was big. And so I remember he started, kind of collecting watches, and he had always his friends over for dinner and discussing watches and showing things and do you see this one, and that one's nice, and what are you wearing? And so he had he bought a few Ebel. Gérard Perregaux Ferrari edition,
Ferrari period, yeah.
pink gold. I remember that watch was like really cool.
Yeah. Do you remember watches that you had that like they were like your holy grails back when you were growing up?
Yeah. I mean, these Ebels, they were. I mean, the Ebel chronograph on the 1912, 1911.
They're getting very popular these days. You notice the secondary like the vintage market is picking up these Ebels a lot.
Yeah, I mean, but the movement is beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's rattrapant. I mean, it's beautiful. And my uncle was a professional football player, and he won 2-3 times the cup. And he was working in the championships, and he was playing at Geneva Servette. And the year they won the championship and the cup, and they did the triple win, he got an Ebel chronograph signed and everything, and he was always wearing this, you know. And it was like my uncle was kind of my hero, right?
Yeah.
And he had an Ebel, and it was interesting. All these watches in the brand, and it was impressive. I mean, the beauty and the power of Ebel in beginning of the 90s was wow.
Before we get to Maurice Lacroix, because honestly, I love this conversations with someone from like I call you guys the insiders, because you know exactly what's going on. What in your opinion, what makes a brand that gets so big? And then, like we spoke about Gerard Gente before getting here, and we were talking about Ebel. Gérard Perregaux used to be huge, and then what makes it that big? And then suddenly you see the downfall of a lot of these brands.
Yeah. I mean, what I can tell you about also Maurice Lacroix. I mean, it takes a long time to build up a brand. So it's not about the right decisions you take, but it's all about the wrong decisions you don't take. Yeah. And I mean, also if I talk, I mean, if I talk of Maurice Lacroix, I mean, we were very strong coming out of the 2000s. We had collections. We had the retrogrades, which were really popular. We were selling thousands of them, and of course, then was the threat about ITA not delivering anymore. So we had to find a solution, and we didn't have many alternatives. So we decided to invest a lot of our money in the manufacturing competence, and that was a real challenge, because at the end, you know, if you're a volume brand and you start doing value and high end, I mean, we were then selling watches, basically models which were at 2,000, 3,000, suddenly they're at 6,000, but the manufacturer, the high end, you went from 7,000, 8,000 to 13, 18, 20. And, you know, up there,
It's difficult.
there's a lot of people up there who've been there longer than you and are recognized for that.
Yeah.
And you're not recognized for that. You're recognized for 1,000 to 2,000, right? So either you have all the money in the world and the bigger budget than the biggest brands of the industry to change the mindsets quite fast, but you can't. So, you know, there was, you know, you see kind of this kind of decision and this kind of strategy can break you very fast, right? And for Ebel, I don't really know all the details, but it's, you know, it's often about taking the right decisions or not taking the wrong decisions. Because I always say, you know, whatever the strategy, stick to it, don't change.
Yeah.
And it's better than changing every 2-3 years, because what I see is, I mean, we had also the same issue is every 2-3 years a different positioning, every 2-3 years a different image. So, you know, watch industry is very slow. It's slow to build, but interesting, it's very fast to decline.
To collapse. That's the idea of my question, is that you see brands that were huge and they used to produce the best watches, looking watches, designs, and then suddenly they're gone. And but what I notice about Maurice Lacroix, if I go 5 years ago, at least what I think of it, what I see here in Kuwait, collectors around us, is that the Icon, for example, if you take the Icon collection, I like the way you're evolving it. In a way, I still remember it used to be only the simple colors like blue and black. I remember, it still is. Yeah, these are the colors that will always be there. But I still remember, even when I get invited to Trafalgar and they have the skeleton, and I told them, this is a beautiful watch, very well priced, but it's too big. And then few years he did the smaller one, right? I was very happy about that. It's the same with the Icon collection. I feel it's your brand is it takes time, but as you said, you don't change. So in the past 5 years, you're doing the Icon and you keep doing it. So what you're saying is stick to the strategy and you see what goes on, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's you know, this is a very tricky part in kind of developing brands and building the brand. But I think one of the benefit is I've been now managing the brand since 10 years, so there's been no kind of change of direction, right? That helps for sure in terms of stability, right? And then with Icon, we designed the Icon in 2016, so we designed the Icon in 2014, but we launched it in quartz in 2016 and mechanical in 2018. And when we designed it, and we did all these design studies, because Icon is just a refresh of the Calypso, which was we did that Calypso in the 90s. It was our most successful product. And actually brought back the Icon because all our customer was telling us, guys, what are you doing? You have here fantastic design. Why don't you bring it back? And the biggest pushback we got from the region here. They were telling us, you know, because Calypso was selling, we were selling 300,000 watches in 2000 and more than 100,000 Calypsos. So we were selling
big numbers.
In Saudi, we were selling 10,000 Calypsos per year. But of course, at a price point of 250 Swiss francs. It was different
So
time,
that's the volume
different
thing, yeah.
position. Yeah, but it's, I mean, people know the watch, and they know the design, and we then did this kind of manufacture strategy. So of course, a watch at 250, there was no more space for that. But then when you worked the years afterwards, customers were telling us, I mean, they were very consistent, and they're very pushy over 10, 12 years. And when I took over, I said, you know, and this is something I learned from tobacco, is if you got such customer feedback, you have to look into it. And this is what we did. So the designer, the product director, which was working with us at that time, it's David Sanchez, who today does Bamberg. And David, we looked at each other, and we looked at the watch, and I mean, the Calypso in 2014, the Calypso from 1990, you were like, okay, so in that size, in that shape, we're not going to relaunch it, but let's put the trends from now, and let's put the trends from the coming years into the watch, and let's see how it comes out. And he did a few designs, and we did a few 3D samples, and we came out and said, wow, there's something to this design. This is a very powerful design. And then already in 2014, we had designed, the kind of the venture diving version. We had designed the chronograph. We had designed the manufacturer. We had designed. So we had actually at the start, because we also said, we have to be strategic how we build this. And we also did market research, which is not very common for the watch business, to get customer feedback to see is there potential. But we also did the whole design studies and thinking, you have to build in the width, you have to bring in the breadth, in the width, in the height. So how all these elements, and how are you going to do it? And by doing this, we saw actually we have here a 20-30 year program at least, right? And so back to your question, how do you do it? And what we see is it's a very difficult balance exercise between, on one side, you want to create value for your customer. So if I sell you today a watch, and in 10 years it's not in the catalog anymore, you lost basically the value of your watch. So you have to have kind of a core or something that stays forever. But if you don't launch anything and don't innovate, especially brands of our size, you don't have a reason to communicate. You don't have a reason to have events to show. So customers will say, "Oh, but you're dead. Nothing's happening," right?
That's a very weird relationship. A lot of people want the new things. The owners of the watches don't want to replace their watches. It's a very difficult thing. But so this collection that you started the beginning of your career, and then we have the novelties for 2025.
Yes.
So you want to talk about these
So I mean, you will blend in some images, but so I mean to your question, how you keep on pushing and developing, it's like you will start, of course, you can do the colors, you can go into different complications. The advantage at Maurice Lacroix, at the price point we operate, we do quartz, we do mechanical, and we have also our own in-house movements on the manufacturer. So that it gives us already the height, and there's already a lot to play there. But then you see in terms of trends, so we listen a lot to the market, we listen a lot to the customer. We have fan clubs in a lot of markets. So working with the fan clubs, involving them in the development process, involving retailers, suppliers, plus listening to the market, it gives you also a lot of indications where you should go and what is next. Mm-hmm. And what we've seen also, so this year is more year of materials. We started the year, we did some very nice versions on PVDs, and then we evolved, we did bronze execution, and launching now newly is titanium. So titanium is also technically, in terms of production and also development, titanium is quite a challenge because of the hardness of the material. So if you want to do polishings, you need to have very high quality. It's a long process. So that was a good challenge to have. And then we said, okay, let's go one step more. That's continuing the materialization this year. So it was about the ceramic.
Ceramics. So you introduced the titanium in a very interesting color.
Yeah.
That is getting trendier and trendier.
Yes.
Yeah?
So it's the ultraviolet. So usually on titanium, because of the color of the titanium itself, usually what brands do is a tone on tone, so kind of gray on gray. But we thought, okay, in kind of in the collection construction, and also to bring kind of in terms of communication and in terms of perception, an attention to people that this is titanium, because if you do a gray on gray watch, only people in the know will know, oh, potentially that's titanium, right? And the gray looks a bit more dark, brownish, maybe that's titanium. But remember, we operate 1,000 to 3,000, and people are not such in the know as other would be in other price categories. And this is where we said, okay, we need also to really stand out and also have a trendy color of the moment, which is the ultraviolet. So ultraviolet really fits the brief, and I think so. We have something that, in terms of communication, really stands out. But also happy at the end people take the tone on tone, right?
Yeah. No, the color is beautiful, and it's definitely, and I like that when brand do something new, they do like the crazy colors in the beginnings that differentiate it, and actually the tone on tone is also beautiful. But the major thing that you're gonna introduce, actually not introduce officially until like in 9 days, is the ceramics.
Ceramics, yes.
So we know titanium has been done a lot, yet it's very popular. People like it, especially people like. And another thing, people don't know how the more you wear watches, the more you want them more comfortable. So titanium is definitely, and this is much lighter.
Absolutely.
You can feel the difference. But ceramic it's a very tough material to work with. So tell us about the ceramic. How did you end up with these two products?
So ceramics, as you know, it's a very difficult material. It's highly breakable. So if you want to do a ceramic watch, you basically have to redesign and re-engineer the whole watch. We had to re-engineer the bracelets because usually the bracelets are attached with pins, but if you put ceramic under pressure, it just shatters. So here we had a whole system with screws. Also, what you often see on ceramic is if you move a bit the bracelet, you cannot make it too tight, because otherwise, again, tension, it breaks. But if it's too loose, it's also cheap, right? So it was about finding a system and a technology of this bracelet that it's sturdy enough, it hangs together enough, but still you can only use screws. So basically the whole strap, the whole bracelet to redesigned. And then the second thing, because it's an icon, so we want to have the icon design. So on the bezel you have kind of 6 claws, and on the steel version these 6 claws are screwed from behind. But you cannot do that on the ceramic. Yeah. So the bezel of the ceramic is a monoblock.
Mm-hmm.
So you got the bezel is a monoblock. You got, of course, the case is a monoblock, and in terms of straps, some elements have been combined to be able to hold together, but not to break or shatter. Mm-hmm. And it's still a bracelet, so you have to have a certain kind of flexibility.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's very interesting for us. Sometimes you say, "Oh, it's just a ceramic," but for you guys, it's like 2 years of development to get to the final product.
It was 3 years of development, yeah. And there's also a nice challenge on the white one, because so we really wanted to have a pure white. So okay, fantastic. We're there with the material. You put in a dial. You're like, oh my God, this is really pure. You have to have a white tile, and then you see, oh, the anti-reflective it's turning out yellow or brown.
Oh, so it changes the color of the dial when you look at it.
Yeah, so it looks brownish yellow. So what we had to do in the last phase of the development, we had to rework all the so the dials were white, but the sapphire crystal was giving this kind of yellowish tone. Yeah. So we had to rework the supplier to find kind of a neutral anti-reflective coating.
Very interesting. And which one is your favorite out of all of them?
I will go for the titanium tone on tone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's very elegant, very nice. Of course, I have a favor on the ultraviolet. I think the color is great, but again, I'm gonna wear it every day, so.
So you want something that's
Yeah.
more settled, I guess. And all of them are not limited, or they're not.
No.
Are they limited by numbers?
Not
Regular
at all.
production.
Not at all. It's
Nice,
a normal
nice.
production. No, we want to have as many people as possible.
Mhm. And also the prices. So if
Yeah.
I know, maybe you know the prices in Swiss francs. In Kuwaiti, I know a little bit.
Yeah, I know in Kuwaiti the ceramics they're both at 1,145, and I think the titanium just around 1,000
It's very similar
Yeah,
to it. Yeah,
yeah.
1,050 or something. 1,050.
because it's
15K.
2,700 Swiss francs,
Yeah.
and on the titanium and
Still
3,000.
priced very well.
Yeah.
Right. For
I
like
mean-
a fully ceramic watch, that's definitely amazing.
Also, the
price.
titanium is because it's full titanium and full ceramic. So I mean, it's in terms of pricing, it's one of it's most accessible price points
Yeah.
on these materials.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much. But the last question I want to ask you, and so you've been with the brand for 10 years.
No, now it's
You said
16
it.
years.
16.
In 10 years managing the brand.
10 years managing the brand. If you have a very quick answer for the next 5 years, or what do you aim to do with Maurice Lecourroy in the next 5 years?
Yeah.
Where do you want to see Maurice Lecourroy in the next 5 years?
I mean, what we really want to be is to be recognized and valued as one of the top brands in this kind of 1,000 to 3,000 Swiss franc segment, being one of the key players there. So there's still a lot to do. As I always say, our biggest challenge is not the product, because I think in terms of product development, we offer a lot of quality. The designs, it seems to be people are liking our designs. They understand what we do. So it's more the challenges on the awareness, so that people know what we do and that people appreciate what we do. So kind of usually we have this kind of reaction, oh, I didn't know you did these kind of products. It looks great. But until people know us, it's a long way.
So that's where you go back to your marketing and advertising background.
Absolutely.
What you love. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your
being
time.
here. I hope you really enjoy Kuwait.
Very much.
Sorry for the mess behind the scenes.
It's behind the scenes, right?
It's behind the scenes, exactly. And honestly, whenever we have any guests that visit Kuwait, especially for us in Timekeeper, and we love to do these interviews, we do them in English, and we make sure that we have subtitles in Arabic, because we do lack this information and the insights of the industry in Arabic. So we definitely appreciate taking the time to sit with us. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.